Hello, everyone. I'm Alan Furstenberg,
And I'm Mark Tucker, and we are Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. How's it going with you, Mark?
Well, best night's sleep I had last night than I've had in weeks. My smile's a little bit bigger today.
I am totally hearing you. Yeah, no, it's good to see things coming to a solid resolution.
Yes, it sounds like it's still in progress, but we'll see. Hopefully, it will be smoother.
I hope so. I got to tell you, I have been reading the series of articles that you've been posting on your blog, and
About the creation of the Alexa game?
about creation of Number Spies. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I really liked how you're spelling it out and how you kind of articulated, at least for the first one, where the ideas came from and kind of what triggered your thought process there. And it made me also think about, how do I come up with some of the ideas for some of the stuff I've worked with. So I was thinking that might be a good thing to chat about today. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great idea. So, sometimes you're working on projects for work, and you're given the scope, or you kind of help figure out within certain boundaries what you're going to work on. And sometimes it's open season, and you just get to pick whatever you want. And that was the case with Number Spies. You can read the article. We'll include a link to that, and so that you can start following along with the whole experience. But it actually started on Number Spies with this concept of a number station that transmits audio, encoded messages with just a series of digits. And I'd come across that, more than a year ago, and I just thought that would be a really cool voice experience, having the smart speaker tell you what those numbers are. And then one of the things that occurred to me is like, well, there's no way to decode those because it uses something called a one-time pad, and unless you have the one-time pad, there's no way that you can decode it.
Well,
and so I thought, well, what if you could? And so then that turned into Number Spies as the game with its associated flash briefing.
I thought what was really cool about what you're talking about was that number stations, and I've heard about number stations for years, and they're always really cool things to kind of hear about and go, well, what's going on here? And I'll let people read the article to get a bigger picture about what number stations are and how they work. That it was really exciting to see how this latched into stuff that you were interested in when you were younger. So how you were interested just broadly in terms of spies and secret agents and codes and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I used to keep a notebook and of different ways to decode and encode messages, and just a number of other things when I was a kid. And I just kind of remembered, wow, that was just so, a fun part of my childhood, remembering or just playing along, trying to be a spy. So that's what that also kind of pulled into the whole concept.
No, I understand it because, I think about the projects that I work on, and a lot of them boil down to, what were the things that I enjoy doing, or what are the things that I need, or what are the things that I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for a lot of people, the projects that we work on are because we've got this personal passion in them or this personal interest, and it pulls us in and makes us want to do more and see what else we can do with it.
Yeah, no, exactly. There's a number of cases. Something that's important to me is serving others and using technology for good, and that's affected some of the projects. There's a project I have out there called Serve More, where you can find service projects in locations near you, and that happened because I had this desire to bring that to the voice platform, and I knew that there was already a set of APIs out there for a project called Just Serve. And so I was able to take those APIs and bring them to voice, and it's multi-platform. So I've got a Serve More Alexa skill and Bixby Capsule. And then there's other projects that are along that same vein of just, what can we do to do good?
Yeah.
So that's another place where I've come up with some ideas.
No, I know what you mean. When I think of where I got started with Voodoo Drive, and what Voodoo Drive does a lot of is works with files that you have stored on Google Drive. and that kind of got its start because back when I was working with glass, I was at a hackathon, and I said, well, what do I want to do? What are the things that I can't do right now that this would help me with? And a big one for that is when I'm out remembering the to-do list that I need to be managing.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and I wanted this notion of being able to edit a to-do list when I was at my computer, but easily access it while I was on the go.
Okay.
So this created this notion of being able to have a file saved in a central location, and Google Drive is a nice central location for that sort of thing. And from there, it's grown into, well, how do I manipulate a spreadsheet with my voice? But also manipulate the same spreadsheet on a desktop or on a mobile device.
Right.
And it was that need and that, an interest I've had in spreadsheets for years that let me connect the pieces.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it in one case it was solving a practical need, but the thing that surfaced the impetus to think about the idea was a hackathon.
Yeah.
And I've had that same experience. Early on in my Alexa journey, then there was a hackathon for writing kids experiences. I don't know if it was kids games or exactly what it was, but I have and at that time Echo Show was pretty new, and so I created something called Picture Guesser, and it's still out there today. In fact, the code base hasn't been touched for probably two and a half years or something. It definitely needs an upgrade. There's some more things I want to do and some workarounds with technology I had to do at the time, but it's a tile game. So you get a picture and it's covered in tiles, and you can remove the tiles and you guess what it is. And that's definitely not a voice first game. You couldn't play that without the display, but there is it was kind of a thought experiment that started with a hackathon.
So they thought where for that sort of thing, what was the inspiration? What kind of drove you to think about, I can use tiles and pictures and control that with my voice?
Well, on that case, I think I just started going through different types of and genres of games. I'm like, okay, well, there's you've got your puzzle games, you've got your just kind of going through, thinking through, well, what don't we have on Alexa right now, and what I just thought about, what about those tile games, and so that's where that one came from.
And I think
thinking through.
Yeah, and I think Number Spies fits into that as well, where you had this, you started thinking what's not been done, what's outside the box a little bit, because I think we've seen adventure games well done, escape room type games, well trod territory. What are the games that we haven't seen yet, and what do we want to see?
Well, and what Number Spies kind of even turned into was almost more this alternate reality game where it's not all happening in a single voice game. You have a flash briefing that gives you the number station transmission, and then you would have to manually decode or go to a website to decode the message, to get a verified code, to go into the game, to redeem the verified code, to get the points. And that's only one of them. You could have a message that you decode, which then takes you to a website, which then takes you to a picture with numbers in it, and then you use those numbers as a verified code in the game to prove that you've decoded the message. And so that's kind of the idea was that it was a bigger experience than just a voice game. It was a kind of like a spy experience.
Well, I mean, and I think what that kind of speaks to again is this notion of we're developing skills and actions in general that aren't narrowly, this is a voice only experience. Mm-hmm. It's multimodal, it's multi-device. It's the sort of thing where, you can easily envision being able to do some things would require a keyboard, and some things would be better on mobile, and some things would be better by voice. And it's when you put the three of them together that you're creating something that's bigger than any one piece could be.
Yes. And in some cases, I feel like the game's been successful in that it, successfully transmitted that kind of that idea of what I wanted to accomplish. But in other ways, then it hasn't really got a wide usage, and we'll talk about that at some point. But because it's not something that fits into a very specific grouping, and it's kind of a new game, new experience, then it does have more of an uphill challenge to get people to invest that kind of time into it.
Yeah, no, I can easily see that, but I think a lot of games, when they first get their start, certainly do. It does require people to kind of latch onto the notion of what is this game.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them, I think of some early arcade games that never caught on in the arcade, but and these were early role-playing arcade games. They never caught on in the arcade because it didn't quite work in that format.
Right.
But when they were brought onto home computers, they worked really well. And the name of all of them escape me at the moment, because of course they do. But there were several examples of that, and it's funny that I think the flip side of that is taking a well-established game type that people are very familiar with, like a crossword puzzle, and you know where I'm going with this one.
Yeah.
And and saying, well, this is something that people were used to printed, and it became a very different thing when they were able to use it on a mobile device, and people loved doing crossword puzzles on mobile devices. And when I started working on something, a crossword puzzle for voice, a lot of people said to me, how's that going to work? That doesn't make any sense. And I think it has been interesting adapting a very common genre that we're used to into a slightly different format, and seeing how it works and seeing what can be done with it and addressing some of the problems. And that's what I've been trying to do with Crosstalk.
Yeah, I think that's a good example, because there are some things that you need to adapt, and then some things a multimodal experience is going to be the best experience. I've also seen games like 21. That's a fairly simple card game. I've seen that brought to voice only, or you can do it with a smart display or only with the smart speaker. But I've also seen some games just boil down to like a one hand or a one kind of a shortened version of the game, because it is so more complex. And so that's also another way to get ideas would be, how can I take this existing game or idea and then narrow it down to just something that could be done fairly quickly on voice. And
when it comes to ideation, though, I have to give you credit for the idea of Crosstalk, because you had been posting these crossword puzzles to highlight some recent Alexa announcements. And my initial reaction to seeing them was, oh, that's pretty cool. Why isn't this voice first? Why are we talking about voice, but don't have a voice first experience? So I wanted to see what a voice first experience for that would be like. That inspiration comes from a lot of different places, and that's always fun to see.
Sometimes the inspiration comes from like new features. You're like, oh, this new feature is coming out. So like I've seen some things recently with the new Echo Show that has the rotating camera. And so people experimenting with the ability to move back and forth, and how does that affect the screen? So some of them are triggered with technology. I know like this last week, APL came out, Alexa Presentation Language, came out with version 1.5 with some additional controls like checkboxes and radio buttons and toggles. And what immediately came to my mind with that was, oh, a settings page. So now this idea of, well, maybe these voice experiences will have, if they have a multimodal experience, would have a settings page. Like I know, I'm working on a game right now that has family mode, or has, I've worked on games that have brief mode. And so, you can control those through voice commands like, typical intents, but I could also see groupings of multiple of those together onto a settings page.
Yep. No, definitely. One of the things I think I felt for a while, and again, this goes back to the multimodality, how do we represent this thing? How do we offer the right experience in the right place at the right time?
Right.
So you're not necessarily going to want to try to go through the settings by voice, but if APL works on a mobile device, then you'll be able to control the settings from a mobile device, and for all voice experiences, those settings will still be in effect. Or you also have a web page that lets you into your account if you've got account linking, and this lets you set the settings on the web page or on a mobile device, and yet still use it in some other ways. I think that's, an important thing to kind of think about as you're approaching this. The voice experience doesn't have to be everything; it just has to be the right thing.
Right. No, I agree. Like Number Spies has a companion website that there's some settings and things that you can do on the website that then you can link back to the voice experience. Soar Audio, which is the device I'm working at, the project I'm working at work. We have a website and mobile apps that go along companion with the voice experience. So I think as we're developing these different things or thinking through ideas, we need to think through, is this going to be a voice only? Is it going to be a multimodal voice? Is it going to have companion mobile apps, companion websites?
I think
it's going to go on.
I think of it in terms of not are we going to have, it's more how does each individual component complement the others? How do we end up creating something that is bigger than all of the parts put together? And I think that's truly what voice starts letting us do. It's what mobile let us do with desktop apps. And in terms of that, in terms of new features, again, I was thinking when we had our conversation about action links and quick links, or now assistant links and quick links, that this doesn't just become an advertising mechanism, it becomes a true functionality bridge. So that for something like Voodoo Drive, if I'm browsing through a file that's in Drive, with one click, I can say, you know what, I want to talk to that instead of typing to that.
Yes. Well, and that's also interesting because typically those types of things have been branded. So like Google or Amazon would say, oh, when you're using this in a button to open something, then there's certain branding that goes along with that, like talk to Alexa or open this on Google Assistant or something. Some of those are really long, so I don't know, but I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been some official branding released about those experiences from the big players. But maybe that will happen.
There sort of has been with assistant links, but that's for another show, I think.
Well, I'll be interested in learning.
But yeah, I think certainly this being able to smoothly transition between all of them, I think that when you start getting those ideas into your head, and we're talking about ideation, is, you start to say, well, how do I take something that I'm used to in one format? Crossword puzzles, word games, action games. How do I take those business applications? How do I take those and then seamlessly be able to move from keyboard to mobile to voice and back in any fashion that makes the most sense to me?
Yeah, no, I agree, because there's because we are on multiple devices throughout the day, and there are times where it makes sense. So in some cases, we might want to take the exact same experience with us from the TV to the car to the mobile to the we'll want to do that. But there's also times where we want to have different. Maybe it's not the same experience, but maybe it's the same application, different ways of input. That we want to be able to take with us throughout those different things. So like if we have something that's tracking like where we're driving and our speed, or car things, but then maybe there's a website that's going to or a mobile app that summarizes those things, like, oh, you're within 3,000 miles of such and such repair, or these things are coming up, or just giving us more information than we have. Truly being an assistant, kind of assisting us with the
well, exactly. I also think about it in terms of things like health. I certainly you know, a lot of people wear, you know, have wearables that track how many steps they've made. Well, okay, that's useful and that's great. But how do I also take that data and mix it with this other application that's tracking my weight, and this other application that's recording the food that I'm eating? And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll need to record what I'm eating on a mobile app, and sometimes I'll be doing it using the voice app that's in my kitchen. And, you know, how do I then take all of this data and get something useful out of it? Whether that's, you know, a morning briefing, or, you know, when I say goodnight to my voice agent, it said, you know, good night, and hey, you did a great job on your caloric intake today.
Yeah.
Or, you know, when I record my weight, it says, hey, you're doing well, and here's how it relates to these other things. That immediate feedback that helps you tie everything together.
Right. Or, you know, like if we're thinking like Amazon Go shopping experience where you know, we have cameras and stuff and they know what we're putting into our cart or not, then, you know, you put the Frosted Flakes or whatever into your cart and you get this beep, 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 beep. Like, you sure you really want to buy this thing? If you buy it, then you're going to eat it, which is going to affect, you know, your goals, which is going to.
Right. You know, and you know, one of the things I like to think about, and this kind of ties back to Number Spies, where, you know, you had the daily flash briefing, which you would get regularly, and tie it into the website and tie it into a conversational voice action as well, a voice skill as well.
Yep.
That, you know, sometimes you need this two-way feedback. You know, so one of the things I did with Voodoo Drive for spreadsheets, it's not just that you're asking for data, you're also putting data into it. But there are times when you just want, you know, a status report, something that happens during your morning routine, you know, either as a flash briefing or as a news summary or whatever. Something I like to think of as kind of an audio dashboard, where it just comes at you every day. Here's the current status of whatever, and tie that into the feedback system that you're also putting into it. So yeah. I think my takeaway from that, from what Number Spies has taught me when we're learning with Voodoo Drive, is use all those platforms. You know, yes, you want to deliver audio, and in a voice first world, just delivering audio can be really powerful, but so is putting data in, responding to it, and having that conversation.
Yeah, and then the idea, like with Number Spies, there's an Alexa skill and there's a flash briefing, like Matchbox.io on their question of the day. You answer the question of the day. If you get it right, you get a bonus question. But every day at the end, there is this little you know, short podcast that's about the question that you were asked, the main question that you were asked, and gives you a little bit of, you know, facts and behind the details, and there's a little bit of friendly banter between the two hosts that's talking about that topic, and that's just fun. It's you know, it deepens the experience. So I do like the idea of having this multiple app, or this idea of an app or a game and a podcast. I can also see it on the other end, where if you're using a mobile app, then there's a number of things that you can do, but then it also leads you into, well, this is what you need to do to use that experience on voice. So it's almost like, you know, having an app on mobile is something that people are really familiar with. We talk about having skills and actions as being voice apps on these smart speaker devices, but I don't know that, you know, people have, you know, quite caught on to there's a skill or action for that, you know, kind of concept. But having some, you know, something that leads you into that experience, whether it be the mobile app that's pointing you towards this is how you use the voice experience, or you know, or like, once again, we talked about quick links and stuff, but like social media or radio or TV that's pointing you into the voice app experience. So those are all things to consider as you're, you know, going on with your ideas. How do you implement the idea? How are you going to get people to use it? How do you discover, you know, how people discover it? How are you going to keep retention? Are you going to monetize it somehow? What's your return on your development investment?
Mhm. And I
on
assume
this?
you'll be talking about all of this stuff later in your series.
Yes, I'm going to break apart Number Spies part by part and talk about it, and the good and the bad, and we'll, hopefully I'll get some good feedback on what other people are want to hear about. But I'll just kind of go through.
No, and I think it's important that we're saying we're having this as a conversation, because I know that certainly some of the lessons that I already see coming from Number Spies came from conversations that we had with other developers and other successful
Yep.
voice creators, particularly at Matchbox.io. They've been pioneering some of this stuff, so learning their lessons has been fantastic.
Yeah, no, there's just so much that you can learn from somebody else, and I'm just trying to throw information out there to help other people learn from what I've done, and hopefully that will just kind of make the whole thing grow bigger.
Yeah, no, I hope so. And as always, we encourage people to give us feedback on this. I know you're encouraging people to give feedback on the articles that you're writing.
Yep.
What's coming up on the next article? So what's the article after ideation?
Well, I'm just a big like a system component overview. What ended up happening since it wasn't just a game, it was a flash briefing and a number of other things, and you needed to take messages and decode them, and there was a content management system. So it's a laying out what ended up being the whole architecture of this experience, which turned out looking more like an enterprise software solution than a game. That's the next one, and then we'll start breaking into those each parts, part by part.
Okay. Well, I look forward to chatting about it with you next week then.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. This has been fun as always. A great way to start the week, talking with you and talking with the community about voice development.
Yep. And as always, we encourage feedback as well. So thank you, everyone. This has been Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care.
Bye.